Good morning. We are summarizing and reviewing final section of Hemshech Ayin Beis for the second time. We learned it all already, but then, being that the Hemshech, the Rebbe Rashab, never concluded it, we went back to learning the source material, namely the Maimorim of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe, Mika Hashem Elokeinu HaMagbi L'Sheves, upon which this is based, the Ayin Beis, and then in that context, informed by that background and information, we come back now to Ayin Beis, try to piece together, firstly, the broader context of it all, and then answering the questions, as well as concluding the themes that the Rebbe Rashab has begun discussing and didn't conclude in every instance. That's the process, what we're doing right now. So we are on page 1370, top of 1376. So let me give a short overview. So what we're in the middle of right now is really understanding what Torah is, Torah, as he called it, which really began on page 1350, after long over 550 pages discussing interface through tefillah, interconnecting and interfacing between existence and the divine, primarily from the bottom of Yadaita Hayim Vashavesa Levavecha Kehashvayu Elikim B'Shamayim Emal V'La'aretz Mitochas Einoi. That was the operative verse that he was analyzing and discussing for quite a while. He says now, Ato, page 1350, the Rebbe Rashab says, now let's go back and discuss Torah. And Torah is Torah. It's a light, the divine light that God has given us to illuminate the darkness of this world, to give us guidance, to direct us. Guidance and lesson in life, like life's operator's manual, God's blueprint, as he called it, Torah. And as we've been learning now, Torah's emes. It reveals the truth, the ultimate truth, total clarity, the total crystallized truth in a world where there can be confusion, mistakes, and actual deception, which we all see. This is the world in which we live, and Torah is coming to bring the divine truth, what is real, what is true, what is right, what is wrong, and all the clarity, birur. The Chochma is beriru, which comes through Chochma, wisdom. But which Chochma? Chochma law, the divine wisdom, the supernal wisdom. As we learned, primarily beginning on page 1374. Now this is followed after we talked about Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, 3 levels in Torah. All Torah semes, all Torah but 3 levels, Mikra being the most pure divine, and therefore it's expressed only in narrative form, because it's beyond our comprehension, and only actual mitzvahs without details and explanation. Mishnah, Chagas of Atzilus, well, Mikra rooted in Chabad of Atzilus, and Chochma Ma'ayin Temotza, manifesting in Asiya. Mishnah, Chagas, which is already revelation, and therefore we can get a taste of that revelation, and it manifests and nests in Yetzirah, and that's why Mishnah breaks down the details and explains everything that the Mikra says. And then Talmud is the process of us trying to understand Mishnah once there's already a concealment and we don't have that clarity that the Tanoim had, where they were directly linked, ish mipi ish, generation to generation, all the way to Moshe Rabbeinu. So it was essentially as the Torah was manifesting, Torah Shabbat Pataka. It's not Mikra, but it's Mishnah. Talmud is already the process of the Amirayim struggling and debating and the pilpul to understand the nuances, the details that the Mishnah is either is brief, or like he said, dvarim stumim. It could be things that are not clear, that are not understood. And also, what is the halacha? Not every case you could always understand, because some cases Mishnah will bring individual opinions. So the process of Talmud, in contrast to Mishnah, like he said, is not ish mipish. That's b'koyach atzmam, b'koyach sichlam, b'koyach chachmasam. Now that chochma obviously is aligned with what God wants, and that's the process. But it's coming from that effort, and ultimately, as a result of that, it doesn't have chochmei law radiating into chochma tata. It comes through the effort, and through that they do innovate new halachas that were given at Sinai, but they were not revealed at the time. And that's the process of Talmud. Now, to explain that, bringing Torah, in other words, the Torah Semes and Torah Eir from these high levels into our world, which is essentially what Talmud does, he says, let's discuss what is Torah's emes. Torah's emes, Chochma, pure Chochma Bruda, Chochma law, and that is the pure Torah as it is in the written Torah, especially Sefer Bereshis, as he explained. And then it starts coming down into a structure of kavim, of mitzvahs, and more details in a structure. And then he says, so that's Chochma. But where does the Mokim HaMizbarer, where do you clarify in a place that's not clear? In Chochma, the wisdom, the divine clarity is shining. What about outside of the world of Chochma? Like you said, the goal is Gal Semesh Yemes Nir Nigel Gam Leiba Mokim Emes Atzmei. And that should ratify, like a seal, Misamas Emes should ratify and confirm and affirm the clarity of Chochma. And that's in the level, that's Bina. That's what Bina does. Bina is like the discovery and the in-depth evaluation to confirm and verify that truth in Chochma. Like a person who may not have that clarity in the Nukud of Chochma, and on the contrary, could actually make mistakes and go off and actually come to false conclusions, as we learned at length. Because in Atzilus, Chochma radiates, there it's clear. But in Bria, you don't have that clarity. That's why you need Bina, which nests in Bria to achieve that clarity. And he said three things that this clarity does. Number one, it ratifies that truth. It reveals the truth in a place that earlier was not clear. It wasn't clear. Number two, it makes it mukhrich. That well, first of all, it's a truth. It reveals the truth for everybody. Number two, it makes it mukhrich, a compelling case, an absolute certainty. And number three, it removes sigu pselas, all waste and sediments, any questions or any doubts, or like he said, any toss, a sheket, any mistake or falsehood, it eliminates. Whereas the Kudusach, and that's the Yisrael, that's the quality that Bina adds that Chochma does not have on its own. It has it in its own world, but to bring it in the world outside of Chochma, that's what Bina accomplishes. Because from the Kudah itself, for someone who doesn't understand how to appreciate the point of Chochma, you can come to the mistakes that he said. That's where we stopped on top of page 1376. I just want to say a few words about the broader context. I think it was George. I don't know if you're here, George, in today's class. I think I see you are here.
I'm here.
Okay, so you asked a question if it can be connected with the discussion, this Chochma with the Chochma of the oil in the context of Ner Mitzvah, V'Torah Eir, and Ner Hashem, Nishma Sodom, where there's the oil, which is Chochma, and then there's the wick, which is the divine soul, the mitzvah, and there's the Eir that it creates, which is Torah Eir. So I pointed out that there, in the context of Ner, the Chochma is the wisdom of the animal soul. And that's being transformed by the wick, by the divine soul, which is immersed in it and absorbs and draws that oil, that it should move from the Nefesh Abamis, instead of the animal soul being focused with its intelligence on its human intelligence for its own survival and its own needs, it should be directed toward godliness. Well, I will say this. that we're going to learn this and we'll discuss it more at length, that the truth is it goes deeper than that. So in that context, it's not talking about the Chochma of Torah, it's talking about the Chochma of the animal soul. But ultimately, we learned in the Maimarim, the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer, that the goal is that the wisdom of the animal soul, the Chochma, the oil, should become Torah wisdom. And it should become Torah. So ultimately, it is connected and it will be connected because the goal is transforming, as we said, a world of falsity, or at least a world of darkness and confusion, which includes the animal soul and includes the animal soul's intelligence that can be directed just for its own self-interest. And you want to direct that, it should become oil for Torah, to create a flame, a light of Torah, and ultimately the highest levels of Torah. And furthermore, as we shall learn, and we've learned in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer especially, based on the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, that actually when you transform darkness to light, the animal soul, that actually adds to the flame a lot more than the wick does. The wick itself, without the oil, would not burn long. So the real intensity of the oil, of Torah, comes when you transform the darkness into light. And that's what he elaborates at length in the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer. We learned how Torah Sheba'al Peh adds to Torah Shebiksav, because it brings that clarity of Torah in a place that would not have it on its own. And we're beginning to learn that right now as well. That Bina brings the clarity of Chochma even into a world that does not have that clarity. And that's actually going to achieve something even more than Chochma itself. So I just wanted to fill out the whole picture that ultimately this is setting the stage and the foundation for what we will learn later, which is ultimately the transformation of the animal soul, the oil, the Chochma of the Nefesh Abam, is to become Chochma of Torah, in the words of the Torah, where he actually says those words, that will become Torah, that a person's mind, even the animal soul's mind. Remember, the goal is that the neshama is through its contemplation, it affects the animal soul. To love God with both, also the Yetzer Hara, but then mitzvahs add even more to that, and Torah even more, that ultimately the goal is transforming it to Torah. To use the words he says here, I'm reading from the Alter Rebbe's Maimer, he says that the goal is like this. Okay. Shetia chochma shebenefesh achiyun is bechinas Hashem and animshach achla psila shal mitzvah liskal mamish be'er hatera shetisapach mamish mehepach el hepach mesechel anushi amusig lesechel chochma satera chochma lekis bechinas chakim v'lei b'chochma yediyah. So ultimately, this everything we're learning here is part of that bigger theme. Remember, the Alter Rebbe, the Mittler Rebbe, Rebbe Rashab began on page 1350 to explain Torah, Hamshachim Amayl Lamata, Torah Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud. Ultimately, that the Torah should come even to a dark place. Remember, because the interface is between the divine and existence. It's true. It's not as Mamata Lamayla like Tefillah, but there's still a Mamata Lamayla, because remember, learning Talmud, and especially when you have to teach it to the animal soul, it's all about teaching the animal soul to understand God's wisdom and aligning that, instead of us just thinking of our own human wisdom and our own selfish needs, using our seichel chochma for our own needs, to turn that into oil that will become fuel for the divine wisdom. So that's the ultimate transformation. So we're going to learn about that more, especially when he gets back to it a lot later in this Hemshech. And the interesting thing is that the Rebbe Rashab, once he gets back to it, he doesn't ever comes back and fully answers the question. So we will need to look at these Maimarim of the Alter Rebbe and the Mittler Rebbe to help build this together. But what I'm saying right now is built on because we learned those Maimarim, so we can understand. When we learned it the first time, we were not aware, because we hadn't learned those Maimarim, where this is ultimately leading. But now it's very clear that this whole context of Torah illuminating a place with Chochma Ilah, a place that initially does not have that clarity, is ultimately this central theme of interfacing those two realities: the reality of the divine truth and so-called the truth of the animal soul, or the truth of how we understand things in our confused or dark place, or even false ways. So that's the ultimate goal, to interface the two. And Mikra, Mishnah, Talmud, of course, plays a tremendous role, because Mikra is the most divine, pure divine. Mishnah is already explaining it in Chagas, in Kav and Midas, and Talmud explains it even when we don't get the point in the Mishnah, and you need to bring it down into a place that clarity is not there. The Chochma law of Torah Shebiksav is not radiating in Torah Shebal Peh. That's Talmud. That's not like Mishnah and the Braises of Rab Chanina and Rabbi Shaya. So therefore, that brings it down even further. And we're going to learn even more as we go along how that is achieved. And remember, ultimately, the two things are going to come together. The Torah is going to clarify and illuminate the dark world, but a neshama is going to bring it down even deeper down, because the neshama has to contend with the animal soul, has to contend with the real battles of this world. So ultimately, the mamata lamaila, that where through distress we reach the highest levels of Helam Atzmi, we're going to find in Torah there's an element of that when you struggle and bring Torah into that dark world. So we'll get to that as well as we go along, and they both come together. Right now, the objective is to understand, just to bring it back to where we're now, that right now we're learning how Torah illuminates, Chochma is illuminating in Bina. Bina is clarifying and verifying and affirming that through its discovery and its processing, the truth of Chochma law of Torah. That's the achievement of Bina that we're learning here, which, as we're going to learn soon, well, we've already learned that it has already a mila over Chochma itself, and that's the ultimate goal, that Torah come down all the way below. So that's where you can connect the Mittler Rebbe's Maimer and the Alter Rebbe briefly with the themes we're learning here. But as I said, we have not yet got back to Torah or Ner Mitzvah or the transforming of darkness yet. But since it was brought up and I wanted to put it in broader context, that's what I wanted to add to this discussion. So, as I said, there'll be a lot more said about this as we go along. Right now, we go back to where about Chochma and Bina, and the role of Bina in drawing down the truth of Chochma into a place of that does not have initially that clarity and that truth. Okay. So that's a summary of what we've learned. And unless somebody has any questions, I'm ready to continue. Top of page 1376. Okay, good. I hope that was helpful. So now there's a new parenthesis, another parenthesis here on the top of page 1376. And this is what he says. Pages can be found if you want to follow along the text at ayinbeis.com. The Ayin Mashabir Ma'amis Emes the Chochma, this idea that we're learning here, that the bitter, the clarification that Bina is verifying and confirming or affirming the truth of Chochma, he says, is al derech the ein Chochim kabal hanasayim. So there's an expression that no one is as wise as a person of experience. Otherwise, you could be brilliant, book smart, and know all the data information. But there's something that experience adds that the biggest Chacham cannot have. And this is what we see. We see in life, the fact. A person could be brilliant, but that experience. I mean, the joke goes like this, that when a man with money meets a man with experience, the man with the experience ends up with the money, and the man with the money ends up with the experience. And this is a general rule in general when you're talking about experience. I remember once teaching this to a class of 18, 19-year-olds. And I remember when I explained to them that there's something that experience does that all the wisdom in the world cannot achieve. So someone raised their hand, one of the students, and said, now that you told us this, so now we have the experience. Because I heard that experience. I said, no. Just because you know that experience is adds something that Kabbalah is saying does not mean you gained experience. It just means you know the fact. Experience is experience. It's not reading in a book about experience. It's not reading about someone else's experience. So he's saying that is an example. That is essentially what we're saying when Bina, as Ma'amis, verifies and confirms and corroborates all the different words that we can use. The emes of Chochma is al derech ein Chochem Kabbalah Nesayin. Shari ein kol chodesh b'nesayin zeh. There's nothing new in this experience. You can read about it in a book. You can know it already in your mind, theoretically. So what was really added when it comes to experience? What is experience adding? That's what he's going to explain now. We're talking about someone who's already clear for him in his mind, even before he came to an actual nisayon b'poel mamish, to a real experience, to a real test or a real life experience. He's learned it, he knows it well. And you see this, we're not talking about an ignorant person, obviously. We're talking about a Chochma. It says, Ein Chochem Kabbalah Nesayin. So he has the Chochma. What's missing? That experience adds. So nothing new has been added. It's not like you learn some new information. If you learn some new information, that's more Chochma. Here the Chochma is intact. It's just something is added. So he says, Rak shebenesayin misamis amitis haseichel. So what does the Nisayon do? It verifies, it certifies. Maybe that's another good word, certifies, and confirms and verifies the truth of the idea. Because the idea, as long as it's a theory, and it could be a theory that's an airtight theory, but there's something you have not tested it. It's not been tested in real time. It's like a scientist came up with a theory, but he's never tried an experiment. So the experiment does not add new chachma, but it adds a dimension, a qualitative dimension to verify mitis hasech v'hainu sheba begilui ubebirur yeser ha'emes shebezeh. That the emes in the theory of the chachma becomes more revealed, more clarified. Like we said before, it's megalas ha'emes. The emes is there. The verification, let's say when we're talking about discovery, and let's say witnesses and evidence and everything proves that the initial theory was true. So the theory doesn't change, but now you've demonstrated in a revealed way, in a clear way, the truth of it. Till now it was true, but was only true in its little world. Now you brought a begili. He's giving you now examples from Avraham Avinu in general. Ish neman means a person of faith, a trustworthy person in general. So nevertheless, we find that a person, a trustworthy person, goes through tests, tests to see if his amuna will stand up. Will it actually be actualized? We know that Hashem tested Avram with 10 different Eser Nishenis Nisnas Avram Avinu. Avram Avinu was a Ish Neman. God knew who he was. He didn't come from nowhere, and yet he was tested. So what does the test do in a case where a person is already a faithful person? You know he's trustworthy. So he's further testing him. So he says, Shenimtze levove neman b'nisyenis shemara birur amitase v'nemon nohose b'yeser. That the nisyenis demonstrated that his heart was completely faithful to God. Shemara b'birur amitase v'nemon nohose b'yeser. It revealed, and in an increased way, the truth and the trustworthiness of this person. So you may have a person, let's say you trust, but you've never tested them. You trust them, either your instinct trusts them, or you have seen over the years that they're a trustworthy person. But then when there's an actual test, something happens that's hard to really put your finger on, but it's just been actualized. You see the person, it's like, let's say, a faithful soldier. You trust that they'll go into war, they're going to fight for the cause, and they won't desert the army. They won't desert. They won't run away. But then you see them actually do it. It adds a dimension to the emes of it that simply is not there when it's still theoretical. Like the pasuk says, God said, "Now I know that you are a person that fears God, that reveres God." Let's say it's better. And God did not know before. Didn't he know before that he is a man of faith? A man of divine revering the divine? But now it was verified and revealed. So even though God may have known it, and he definitely did know it, but it became revealed in a way that everybody can see. So now the Klei Yakar talks about this. What was the purpose of the Nisyanis of Avram Avinu? Let's say Akedah Yitzchak was the ultimate Nisyan, but all of them. So the Klei Yakar says, Shenigla el azulas, that the purpose of it to reveal to others. But the Rebbe Rashab wants to say more than that. Ein Chochma Gebal Nisyan is not just for others. V'yashlem shegam la'atzmei harizebah b'izgalus u'ba'mitis yeser. So for more than just the Klei Yakar says it's revealed to others, okay. In other words, you yourself know, but others are not aware. So now that's been verified. And you've been proven trustworthy to others. It says Yeshlemed also to himself, there's something that's added. It comes revealed and more, and becomes more, the truth of it becomes more expressed than when it was before the test. And look to a mimer that we spoke earlier, which is back in volume 1. I see it's here, page 457. So if I recall correctly, he talks there about hasagas hamus, understanding the very personality of something, and two, seeing it. So there's yediyas hamitzias, you know that something exists, but you don't necessarily know its personality. You see a piece of art, but then there's someone who has hasagas hamuhus. They appreciate the art, they appreciate the depth of it, its deeper meaning, and so on. But then there's a whole other level called riyas hamuhus. You actually see it. There's something that sight adds that even the deepest understanding it doesn't have. And he's comparing again, like Baal Nasayan, that once it's experienced in a revealed way, it adds a dimension. And this is using as an example for the birur of Bina, that's ma'amis as ha'emes the Chochma. So that's what this parenthesis added. This parenthesis tells me again that very likely a big part of this paragraph and this, or at least this section, is probably from a mimer. I have to find it. It sounds like a Mittler Rebbe's mimer, but maybe not. I have to find it because the parentheses, the fact that he's adding a parenthesis, sounds like he's explaining something that's written already. In other words, it's not a parenthesis just explaining himself, the Rebbe Rashab. That's my my gut instinct. But I'm going to find. I'll look around to see if I can find it. I do want to add something. Well, let me stop here if anyone has any questions on this. And then I do want to add something I wanted to mention that I owe you, that I said I would look into, and I now have clarified it. So we'll get to that in a minute. But let me first, we finish the paragraph here. Any questions? Okay, I think it's very good. It's very clear. Okay, the thing I wanted to add, which somewhat connected to this, but not entirely. You may recall I said I was going to get back about Birur Sheni. On page 1374, there was one line where he said, so though I believe I did explain it, but I did some more research over Shabbos to what this Birur Sheni exactly is, and I found what I was looking for. So first of all, that section, page 1373 and 1374, I'm going back for a moment, where he talks about the difference between Mishnah and Talmud. The Mishnah is Ish Mipi Ish, a clarity of Chochma law shining within Chochma Tata. And the Brises of Rab Chanina and Rab Ishaya verified are also in that category. Atzilus, meaning it's Mekabel from Shem Ma, like he said, and therefore they are connecting Ish Mipi Ish. Talmud does not have that. Or the Brises they did not verify does not have that level of clarity. That's why they need their koyach hachochma and koyach hasech. Okay, so he was speaking how that chochma bruda is there in Mishnah, and he explained that this all comes from Atzilus, And he explains, so this is based on a mimer called the Eilish Shmois. It's a mimer in Torah right at the beginning of Shmois, where he discusses this topic. And it's elaborate, and you can look it up there if you want to know exactly where it is. It's in Shmois, pages 49, B and C, where he discusses it. He discusses there, Shishim Heim HaMelacha is the Mishnah, Shmeinim Pelakshim, which is the Braisa, and then Aloma Sei Misper, the Talmud. But he speaks about this idea, and he explains what Bidur Sheni is. Bidur Sheni is actually different than I explained it. I explained it more as a bidur that brings the clarity down further down below. Bidur Sheni there, he says, is that is the first bidur is when something is someone produces, let's say, a piece of food, and so it's ready to eat. The second bidur is when you actually digest it, and you're ready, and you break it down further and eliminate the waste. So it's a bidur rishon and a bidur sheni. He said the Tanoim, we're talking Baalei Mishnah, and the Braises of Rab Chanina and Rab Eshia that they confirmed, that has a bidur sheni, because the Tanoim, what they did was, they clarified even further these ideas that it should be ish mipi ish. And that's what he means by bidur sheni. So it's radiating with Chochma law that goes all the way back to Matan Torah to Moshe Rabbeinu. Whereas Talmud, or the Braises that Rab Chia and Rab Eshaya did not verify, doesn't have that bidur sheni. That's essentially what he says in Torah and in Eira Torah he elaborates even more. That Tzemach Tzedek, if you want to look it up in Eira Torah Shmeis, page 14 and on, and page 109 and on, if you want to look it up. And I just wanted to get back to that because I knew that it's discussed elsewhere, and I wanted to find it exactly, and that's the point. The relevance to where we are now is obviously there because Mishnah is the level of Chochma law, radiating Chochma Tata. Talmud is already the level where you don't have that clarity, and you need to work on that clarity, which we're going to get to soon as we talk further about. Right now, we're back to Chochma and Bina. One more paragraph on Chochma and Bina before we get back to Torah Shebiksav and Torah Sheba'al Peh. Okay, so that covers that. Again, any questions? I'm happy to take. If not, we'll continue the new paragraph, page 1376. So he says like this now. V'hinei, and now koyach habirur hazeh ubebina. This koyach habirur of power to clarify, and we're talking about clarifying in a place where there is no clarity initially. We're not talking about somewhere where the clarity is shining. You know, the light is shining, the light is shining. We're talking about outside of that domain. That's in Bina. Why? Shahariya'iyun the Bina hu amavarer. The in-depth probing or discovery, I use the word, or evaluation or analysis, dissecting, all these words fit into the word iyun, is the iyun of Bina. That's the mavarer. That's the one that finds clarity. The nekudas ha-chochma ain't a tzricha birur. The nekuda of chochma on its own doesn't need clarification. V'hila ma'ila me'inyan ha-birurim. So now he's elaborating, because it's higher than birurim. Birurim is in an area where you have birurim, where there's a lack of clarity, or things are mixed up. So you need to separate. You have dross, and you have the fruit, and the shaft, and the dross, or pits and fruit, where there things are need to be separated or clarified. Chochma is l'mayla me'inyan birurim. Even though he said the chochma is biriru, but if you remember, what he meant by that is that Chochma brings clarity. It's a source of clarity because it is clear in its own reality. Like you said, Chochma is be'etzem, butter be'etzem. But Chochma itself does not need birur. Chochma is the power that it gives to Bina to be mevarer, as we're going to learn. But Rakoyach HaBinu shemevarer. The power of Bina is the one that actually does the separating and the clarifying. In other words, the actualization of the process. But that's with the power of the Nekuda Chochma. Because if you don't have the Nekuda Chochma, what does Bina clarify? When you're going to verify or in some way affirm or corroborate any truth, you first have someone has to state the truth. You need someone to say, here is the idea, here's the concept, here's the truth of the Nekudas HaChochma. You could say, as the Makabel, I'm not sure I haven't verified it yet. So now he goes the process of verifying. So it's B'koyach Nekudas HaChochma. Well, Kernel, as we discussed earlier, Shahabiru Sodachli is Dafka Ide Misha Borer Be'etza. He said that at the bottom of page 1374. To have clarity, because if Bina would not have Chochma, what are we searching for? If you don't have any, you can come away with a conclusion, you know what, maybe we'll never get clarity. If in other words, if we only had Bina, there was no Nekudas HaChochma that had that clarity somewhere, even if it's hidden, even if it's only by one individual, then we could be on a goose chase because you can search and search, but you need somewhere that there is Misha Borer Be'etzem. So there is that truth. If God forbid, God did not give us the Torah's emes in this world. So yes, human beings, through their own efforts, can search and may find many truths. Human beings are smart, and we do find truths. But you're not going to necessarily find an absolute clear truth because it wasn't given to you. So the best you can achieve is the best that humans can achieve. The fact that there's a Chochma, the Chochma is that it was given to us a very clear truth. Now we have to learn how to reveal it and to express it and to verify it in a way that it becomes ironclad, even in our own minds, in a way that doesn't make any mistakes, and so on. That's the process. So you have two things going on here. V'imkein ba'asoge. And therefore, because Bina is comprehension, canal. So on the level of Bina, Bina does not have this Chochma Brura. It's in the process of finding it, discovering it, and recognizing it. But on its own, it's possible that it could have pselis. It could have waste. It could have things that are wrong. Canal. So in a world where there's a possibility of mistakes, two human beings, let's say, arguing about a point, and they don't have a point of reference. I'll call it a type of divine, the Chochmei law of the clarity of Chochmei law. So being that they're in a world of human intellect, they both can make mistakes, or they may find some clarity, they may not. But you cannot say that you're going to find Tizbara in that world, because there you can make mistakes. So Nekudas HaChochma remains that kernel of truth that's implanted and embedded that we're looking to discover. So we're looking for truth. That's there. So that's what he's adding. U'kamoshin is bar le'il. Like we learned earlier, he's taking us back all the way. And actually, I just realized something. Oh, very interesting. So I'll explain in a moment. U'kamoshin is bar le'il. He's talking about back to chapter 228. We're talking about page 464 in volume 1. So this is when he says commission is bar leil, we're talking here over 1,000 pages back. Well, not 900 pages back, right? Tov Samach Dal V'na Aleph Shinayim Vov. Yeah. So he says Be'inyan Aleph Bina. So there we learned that Aleph Beis, the Gemara says, is Rosh Tevis Aleph Bina. Aleph is like a teacher, from the word Aleph, like Aluf. It also means Aluf can also be a leader, say Aluf in the military is a commander. But Aleph also means like a teacher. And Bina is the student. Aleph is teaching Bina. So it's like Chochma and Bina. Sha'chochma melamedes umeyasheres es habina. Chochma teaches and straightens out, meyasheres, directs and guides Bina. So Bina is like the student. Or you could say, even within ourselves, it's our power to comprehend and understand a full idea. But something needs to keep you honest. It's like a reality check. You know, I pointed out many times that whenever you come up with a concept, an idea, very important to write it down. Because once you start fleshing it out, very often we go completely off. I mean, how many times has it happened that somebody comes up with an idea, you sit and brainstorm about it, half hour later, you can forget, 1 second, where was our point of departure? And you find that you completely wandered off. So always having that spark of ideas, like keeping you honest, like the market correction, so to speak. Because Bina, in its power of development, can also, you can wander and you can get lost in the woods, so to speak. So Chochma is essentially melamedes umiyasheres es Bina, aleph Bina. That's what we learned back then. So that tells you that you need both things. But you want to find clarity, you need to have a point of departure. You need a kernel of truth. Then you need Bina to verify it. And yes, indeed, you have to go through a whole process because it's not clear yet. You need evidence, you need witnesses, you need the support, you need the discovery we spoke about to affirm and confirm that this is absolutely true. Like an auditor. They audit your books and they come away saying, yes, here's the report is the correct one. We are verifying it. We are giving it our stamp of approval, like he said before, a seal of approval. Seal. The epiphany I just had, the thought I just had was, I'll just share it. I'm going to talk about it later for sure more when we talk the broader context. Back there in Ayin Beis, volume 1, was a very powerful piece that for me was a critical link, juncture, that connects the central themes of Ayin Beis. He brought there about aleph Bina 2 interpretations in the word aleph. That aleph is the letters Pella. Aleph is Chochma, but it's also the letters Pella, which means wonder, awe. And he explained from the Zohar that there are 2 meanings in that. One is that aleph is a keli for Pella. Pella is keser, and Chochma ma'ayin temotza. So the clarity and the truth and resonating truth of Chochma is a keli that channels the ayin of the superconscious. That was one interpretation. Of course, an interface context is critical because is the interface between the superconscious and the conscious, between the divine and existence in that sense. But then he brought a second interpretation. Second interpretation is that aleph is Pella, not just a keli for Pella. It's not just the letter Pella, it manifests it. In other words, Chochma is actually keser in the world of intelligence, because Chochma is not just intelligence, Chochma is experiencing a higher truth. And he said it clearly, two explanations. And that led him into a whole discussion of Shem Ma, because Shem Ma is Chochma, and Shem Ma is also the Mili Alfin, Aleph. How do you get 45 from Yud Ke Vav Ke? The Yud is 20. The Hey is written Hey Aleph, that's 6. The Vav is Vav Aleph Vav, and then another Hey Aleph. It's called B'mili Alfin. You're using Aleph. There's another way you could write Hey, Hey, Hey. You could write Vav, 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 or Vav, Yud, Vav. And you could also write Hey Yud, Hey, and Hey Yud. That's the name Sag and Ab. Let's not go into that right now. But bottom line, he explains there how Shem Ma is connected to Aleph, and Aleph Chochma is the bittul of Chochma Ma that allows it to manifest the transcendent levels of Keser, which essentially is like the 2 interpretations in Aremimcha L'Kai HaMelech. Aremimcha L'Kai HaMelech Mamata L'Maylo. That's like the Aleph is a keli for the Pella. And Mamay L'Mata, Aremimcha, the Pella is coming into the Aleph. That the actual Aleph and Pella become like one. So in a way, what we're learning now, Torah, is Mamay L'Mata. That's like an Aleph and Pella become one. Because remember, Torah ultimately, like Mikra, is rooted higher than Seichel. Chakim v'lei b'chachmi yediyah, like I just read from Torah, ultimate Torah. But you want that emes to come down into the world of Chachma and then into the world of Bina, like we're saying here, in a place where you need the birur to clarify it. So I'm thinking out loud here, he's bringing Aleph Bina. It's, of course, on a very basic level, just explains this idea that you need Chochma is the one that clarifies for Bina. But the birur is happening in Bina. but it really connects to the central theme of Ayin Beis back then. This I did not, I just came to realize this is the first time, and that's why the Rebbe Rashab is going back so many pages earlier, because it really creates a link. So for me, it's somewhat a little exciting, because it's yet another place that talk about confirming and verifying. It's another verifier of the central theme of Ayin Beis as it plays itself out throughout the Hemshech. I just wanted to throw that into the picture. Okay. Anybody want to ask anything? Omnom. Now, however, even though we just said the Chochma is that within itself the total clarity and does not need birur. Ein tzricha birur. It's higher than birurim. Omnom nekudas ha-Chochma hi bezeh behelam. The process of clarification is the nekuda of Chochma is there, but it's concealed. That's the challenge here. If it was revealed, we wouldn't have all these issues. So the truth is, so there's a nekudas ha-Chochma that in its own consciousness is very clear, but it's behelam. Because if the nekudas ha-Chochma would be shining, would be illuminating and radiating, then it would be a very clear Chochma. Ein sarich birur. And then you don't need any verification. You don't need any confirmation. It's all clear. Like in the world of Atzilus. It's all clear. You don't need Atzilus birurim. That's why on Shabbos, for example, you don't need birurim, because Shabbos is already it's a clear world of emes, the emes of Elikus. Ukanal b'misha mechavel lamitose. Like we learned on the previous page, but someone, when he looks at the nekuda, is able to be mechavel lamitose, is aligned to the truth, the resonating truth of that truth. There are those that have that level, chacham, they said a higher level of chacham, can look at the nekuda and gets it immediately. And immediately, but he gets it clearly. So the fact that you need birur means you're not in that reality. That is behelam. Birur de binahu. So what is Bina? So Bina is coming, and this is his contribution, the clarification of Bina, shenekudas ha-Chochma ba, Birur de Bina, shenekudas ha-Chochma ba behelam. That the nekudas ha-Chochma, which is within it concealed, I'm just skipping the parentheses. So in other words, the birur of Bina is that the nekudas ha-Chochma is there concealed, like we said, Aleph Bina, but now Bina is working through its effort, through its delving into, through its pilpul and its discussion and analysis and discovery to reveal that hidden nekuda. It's like knowing it's like a needle in a haystack. I just used that. I don't know why I used that example, but like there's a nekuda of Chochma of truth there. We have to find that truth. And that's the work. The parentheses, he says, u'kamoshn is bodily ill. Like we learned earlier, the mashanimshich min ha-Chochma la-Bina. Yeah, that's all part of the discussion back there. The mashanimshich min ha-Chochma la-Bina. That what Chochma goes to Bina, he said Aleph Bina. Doesn't it educate Bina? Hurak ha-sichli de Chochma. He's basically qualifying. If Chochma is being nimshach into Bina, why does Bina need more birur? So he's saying because what's going into Bina is only the seichel of Chochma, not the truth of Chochma, not the absolute resonating truth. It's the intelligence of Chochma. Remember, seichel has two parts to it: the intelligence, and then there's recognizing a higher truth. Hurak ha-sichli de Chochma, lo gili etzem ha-Chochma. Not the revelation of the etzem ha-Chochma, where you have the emes of the Aleph Pella, Shi b'chinas riyah, which is a form of visualizing, a type of profound clarity that comes only in the level of visualizing. Or not quite seeing, but anochas sichlis means a resonating anochas, a leiksach. It's absolutely clear sech. So riyah is even higher. Riyah is like you're seeing it with your own eyes. But there's still a level of clarity that Chochma has that Bina does not have. So the seichel, let's say you come up with an idea, a concept. Bina develops it. So Bina is receiving the seichel. but now Bina needs to verify its truth, and that's where you need the bitter. So Bina is receiving something from Chochma, but now comes the next step where Bina has to do its work, and it's iyun, like he says afterwards. Yesh koyach but Bina levada l'lavan. Bina has a special power that Chochma does not have. Chochma has the power to pass on the seichel. Chochma has also the emes in it, but then there's one unique power that we need here: the power to clarify and to crystallize. Ulelavin, kol dover. To clarify and crystallize every matter, every idea, through a proper and appropriate in delving into our immersion, the Nekudas HaSkola. So in other words, in the Nekuda of the Haskola of Chochma, if you didn't have Bina, besides the fact that you wouldn't have fleshed out the idea, you wouldn't have the power to clarify in a world that's where things are not clear. That's what Bina does. So Bina has a tremendous power. I don't know if he's going to say this. I think he's going to say, he's going to speak soon about birth. Birthing is going to be a good example. You can have a seed from the father, but if you don't have the egg and the womb of the mother, you're not going to have a developed fetus. You'll have a seed, a kernel of a seed. He'll soon say this more in detail, but right now that's what he's saying here. Ubekoyach etzem chusha seichel lahovin ulahasig ha'inyan. And the power of the etzem chusha seichel, that the power of seichel of Bina has a unique power that it was endowed with. And what is that unique power? To understand and to comprehend the inyan, ulahosir mimenu, and to remove from it kol sig upselis, any waste or sig, any sediment or waste. Sheyachal, like he said before, any mistake or error or falsehood. Sheyachal liyas ulaharis ulagalis, in order that we should be able to see, to reveal, to show and reveal as eir ha'emes, the light of truth, behechlich al pi seichel v'atam shenira v'nigla lekel, in a compelling and absolute way, airtight, ironclad, according to seichel and tam, not by emunah, but through a process of that we understand it well. Shenira v'nigla lekel, that should be seen and revealed by all. That's what Bina has the power to do.
Can you take a question?
Let me finish the subject here. Who? And the process is this: al yedei yigia, through exertion, this amkus yisera by inyan, and a profound immersion, an increased immersion in the inyan, by inyan sichli bo kedover mechudesh meikare. And the inyan seichel, that this immersion is to the extent that it becomes like a dover mechudesh. That's how much, because the Nekudas HaChochma, as much it's all there in the kernel, but now the process of Bina has so given it like a whole new life. So it's like a Dov Mechudesh Mikari. Hagam Shekvaru came B'Koyach HaChochma, even though it's all there in the power of Chochma, like we said before, Aval Zeh Behelam, Legamri, B'Koyach HaBina. But there is completely concealed from the power of comprehension and understanding. So therefore, it needs this koyach. I'm skipping the parentheses just to finish the sentence. And with the power of its own power, even though it's coming with the strength of Chochma, because Chochma is the clarity of the truth. But the power, where is the power if you don't have the effort, the exertion that Bina has, which is its own effort? Meaning it's not the effort of Chochma. Chochma has its power of truth. Bina has unique power of someone immersing yourself. That's what the koyach chusha seichel be'etzem is, to bring out the sichli la'erei ulamitase, to bring it to light and to truth. In other words, to bring to light and the truth, the resonating truth of that which was there in that kernel, in that seed, in a concealed way.
To other people, not to the person himself. That the Chochma
I would say
is
to the person himself as well. Because Chochma, without Bina, he said before, Ein Chochem Kabbalah saying, Gam la'atzmei. So I would think it's also to the person himself on a deeper level. That doesn't mean it doesn't have a certain truth within it, But we'll soon discuss. I think he's going to discuss it as well. But I would say to both.
Can I ask my question now?
Just a moment. Just be patient. Let me just make sure I have it all covered here, and make sure everything is clear here. 1 second. I'm going to go back to the parentheses afterwards. The parentheses just adds a qualification because there is a connection between Chochma and Bina that's deeper, but I don't want to go there right now. That's the parentheses. Just want to make sure. Okay, so the topic is not over. He still has plenty to speak about. About the process of how Bina does this, but I think I just want to make sure that he covered this topic. 1 second, give me a second. Yeah, he's going to give examples. Okay, good. Okay, yeah, go ahead. Any questions?
Right. So I think we're learning this as a prelude or as part of learning the level of Gemara, which is in Bria, and the method of clarifying the truth, if you will, of that's resonating within, let's say, a Mishnah, for example. Anyways, we often have different opinions in the Gemara, and that's the whole Pilpul process. But if Bina is bringing out the emes from the Nikud of Chochma, then there is only one truth. But yet you have houses, Beis Hillel, Beis Shammai, that come to different conclusions. And I know there's a saying, Shtehem emes, they're both true, but yet they come to different conclusions. So how does one square that?
You asked this question on Friday or Thursday, and I answered, you have to be patient. He's going to get back to it in the next pages. The Rebbe Rashab didn't get back yet to Mishnah and Talmud. He's going to get back to it. He's going to discuss it.
Okay.
Now you can look ahead. You can look ahead if you like, but he's going to discuss it. So I would just wait.
And by the way, I'm sorry. I truly didn't remember that I asked this question already. That's why you're the teacher. My memory is really bad.
No, that's fine. It's fine. It's a fair question. I'm just telling you that he's going to get back to it.
Okay. Sorry, I don't mean to hound you. I forgot that I already asked.
It's perfectly fine. I'm just telling you that the Rebbe Rashab began this whole subject. He spoke about Shammai and Hillel. He spoke about Talmud and Mishnah, and about Machlekes and all that. And if you remember, he started Bira Inyan. This is a Bira Inyan of that. And then on next pages, he's going to, after 1377 and on, he's going to get back to Mishnah and Talmud and how it worked in the time of Moshe, the time of Mishnah and the Talmud. All this is going to be very clear soon.
I'll stand by. Thank you.
Yeah. Okay. So let me just go back to the parentheses so we don't skip it. So in the parentheses, he's qualifying that there's another dimension of the yichud of Chochma and Bina. Just for the full picture, he says, Rak, bebechinas yichud pnimi de Chochma Bina. Hu sha'atzmas ha-Chochma mer bebina. Like he said before, that you only have the sichli. In the process of intelligence, Bina is only getting the intelligence of Chochma, but not its resonating truth. But that's in the general, that's the regular process of Chochma Bina. But there's a yichud pnimi of Chochma Bina, where there they get united, that the atzmas of Chochma radiates in Bina. Well, commotion is barely ill, like we learned earlier, and I'll tell you the page, 1236 and on, B'inyan yichud pnimi de Chochma Bina. So there's another level of yichud pnimi of Chochma Bina, but that comes a lot later. That's not, we're talking now a much earlier step in the process. Here we're talking about there's an akuda of emes. You're learning something, and there's an emes in it, but you don't get it. So you need Bina to go through the whole process of trying to understand the Chochma until the point that you get there. Then there's another, that process, the Nakuda of emes and Chochma is concealed, and Bina, through its bitter, through its immersion and delving into and exertion, is going to discover it. Then there's another level where there's a yichud pnimi of Chochma and Bina, where they both connect. If you recall, they both gaze at Arechampin and at the ponim, at the face of Atik, of Arech and Atik. It's a whole other level of unity. So here we're talking in the process more of the cognitive process of finding the truth in a place where you don't yet have that full clarity. So it's essentially qualifying here, just to make sure that's not a contradiction, because we did learn earlier that Chochma and Bina connect on an atzmizdika level, but that's yichud pnimi. Okay, so b'koyach atzma, Bina does his job. I think I'm going to stop here, even though there's plenty more to go. One second, let me just see. Yeah, I think I'm going to stop here. It makes more sense. Even though the next section is obviously all relevant, it's going to go back to the darkness of the confusion through Bina, and then that leads us even to deeper clarity. And then he's going to go back to Teresh B'Ksav and Teresh B'Al Peh. I think I'll stop here. Are there any other questions? Let's take any questions here.
I think I posted the correct passage of where he explained Aleph Bina a little in more depth. Can you check to see if I posted the correct passage in the WhatsApp group?
Yeah, let me see. It's page Tov Samach Dal. Yeah, you posted the right page. I have to look at exact, but it looks it's definitely the right area.
Yeah.
That whole paragraph, that whole sif rather, that looks right.
Yeah. Okay. It seemed to resonate with, pardon the pun, with what you were saying.
Does he say the words milamedes and miyasheres?
Don't know about that. I didn't read every word.
Okay, I'll look. It looks good.
It's hard to research while your class is going on. Sorry, keep going.
It's fine. It's fine. It's definitely that area. That section there. Okay, good. Any other questions from anyone? Okay, let's stop here. A little more than halfway down, page 1376.